Welcome, wrestling fans. I'm JP. I'm your host for AW Mania, and today we're discussing Night 2 of Wrestlemania 36. To make things a little bit different, I'm going to be discussing the top matches of Night 2 of Wrestlemania 36. So not every match is going to get covered, not every match is going to get a reaction, so we're just going to stick with the main matches of WrestleMania 36. So let's dive right into it. How was WrestleMania overall? The two-night show, the two-night extravaganza, live and only on the WWE Network and pay-per-view. Personally lived up to the hype that I had set for it. And like I said, I lived up to the hype that I had set for it. Now, for many people, it might have been a disappointment. It might not have been what they wanted. It also may have been that they walked into this WrestleMania not expecting much and already having in the back of their mind that this is going to be a disappointment. And if that's the case, it's going to take a lot to change your mind, and I understand that. And well, then this wasn't the WrestleMania or WWE event for you. But for someone like myself that was looking to be entertained and to be distracted for close to 6 hours, that's the 2-3 hour shows combined, it delivered. It delivered in distracting from real life situations. It delivered in giving some of the most entertaining storytelling, cinematic experiences, whether it have been the segments or pre-taped, TV taped, short film style matches, or just the matches, the in-ring competition itself. Everyone went out there, and the reports even suggested everyone went out there. No chips on their shoulders, no anger towards the company. They went out there because they wanted to put on some of the very best matches they could within the circumstances. No one let anything fall behind. No one, everyone went out there and wanted to deliver for the audience, for themselves, and give a big old WrestleMania feel to what was supposed to be a massive WrestleMania event. And when you think of a WrestleMania, you think of some of the greatest wrestling matches to ever take place on a WrestleMania card. HBK, Chris Jericho, The Rock, Hulk Hogan, Triple H taking on John Cena, Undertaker versus CM Punk, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, Macho Man versus Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man versus Ricky Steamboat. You think of all these great matches that they had at WrestleMania. It's interesting to think about that. It's interesting to put in perspective that on this two-night event, you actually only had one classic wrestling match, and that came from Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley. And it couldn't have come out with a better match, to be honest. These two women were built up as this was going to be your most competitive battle between two legitimate pro wrestlers, one who came from the hard ranks and the hard knocks world of England, the United Kingdom, where she had to struggle to get everything she deserved, everything she earned. She had to fight and crawl her way up to the top of the roster. And the other being Charlotte Flair. The story was spun on her that she is a little princess, a little brat who was given everything just because of her last name, and her struggle to the top wasn't as hard as it was for most women, and most women, including Rhea Ripley, who had to literally scratch and claw her way to even getting a title shot. And there's a lot of truth to that, because Rhea Ripley was really not a household name until most recently. If it wasn't for her most recent performances and actually being given the opportunity to win the world title, a lot of people would have shunned on her. But Rhea Ripley, she has made a name for herself over the last several weeks, and she continues to prove to the world just how good she is in ring, just how good her wrestling style is. And this was a good test for her, a good test against one of the most legitimate pro wrestlers in the women's division in the game today. Charlotte Flair is the epitome of what you aspire to be when it comes to a pro wrestler. She's perfect all around. You want to tell a high spot match? Charlotte Flair could deliver a high spot match. You wanted to deliver a clinical, technical wrestling match, side the headlock takeovers with working the body part. Charlotte Flair is the best at doing that. You want to deliver a quick-paced match with nothing but hard, solid strikes. A strong style match. Charlotte Flair can deliver. She can deliver almost any type of match. And when you're going up a girl against Rhea Ripley, who's relatively unknown to the majority of the WWE universe outside of the NXT universe, a lot of questions are come into play. Just how good is Rhea Ripley? Can she hang with Charlotte Flair? Can she have a classic match? She's had good matches in NXT, but has she really had a legitimate challenger? Her matches with Shayna Baszler, yes, they've been good. Can't say borderline classic, but they were good, hard-hitting battles. But has she had a good, competitive singles wrestling outing? And this was that test. And this, she did. And in this test at WrestleMania 36, we got that match. We got the build-up to this correctly. Charlotte Flair, the Royal Rumble winner, challenging the NXT champion, because the NXT champion, Rhea Ripley, felt disrespected that you consider the Raw champion, the SmackDown champion, your toughest challengers, but you don't consider me on the NXT side, who's worked my ass off, a tough challenger. And out of all of Charlotte Flair's opponents outside of Asuka, I would say that Rhea Ripley gave her toughest challenge to date in terms of keeping up with her in the ring. The story was perfectly told in the ring. Charlotte went to work on a body part, went to work on her leg. Smart technique that is missed in most WWE matches. When you work on a body part and it comes back at the end to tie into the finish. What's Charlotte's finisher? It's the figure 4 leg lock. It's the figure 8, excuse me. And what does she put pressure on? She puts pressure on the legs. So what do you do if you want to win a match? You break down Rhea Ripley's knees. You break down her legs. You soften them. You prepare them for when Charlotte is ready to wrap on the figure 8 and wrap it up and to steal it. Rhea Ripley had her moments. She had her big time. They traded big time momentum. That was what was important, is that each girl was given the right amount of time and expressed and delivered the right amount of momentum to counter one another, to show that they're both meant to be in this match. It wasn't a one-sided beating where one person got the quick finish. It was a back and forth encounter where one mistake was going to be the reason as to why one or the other lost. And in this case, it happened to be because Charlotte Flair damaged and worked over Rhea Ripley's legs. And Rhea just couldn't stand the pain any longer. So Charlotte eventually gets on the figure 8. Rhea's forced to tap, and you knew it was time. Once she locked that in, you saw the excruciating pain and the perfect way that this 20-minute match was laid out, the storytelling, to get to that moment that finally, the moment she locked it on, you knew there's no coming back from this. And it only made sense. So there she was, locks on the figure 8. Rhea Ripley hit the ripcord effect early on in the match where Charlotte Flair quickly kicked out and left Rhea kind of in shock, because that was her big moment. That was going to be her big moment to steal this on an unsuspecting Charlotte. But she battled like a champion that Charlotte is. She battled and worked those legs. Rhea Ripley tried to hit every big power move she could to put Charlotte away. But Charlotte was just too much, too sturdy. Locks it in and picks up a hell of a victory. And one of her finest performances, and one of the most finest performances in a wrestling match that took place in an empty arena. We don't see that quite often. We don't see empty arena matches very often. And the WWE, to give them the time that they had and to allow them to put on a classic wrestling match, was a surprise to myself and to many fans. And I believe this was the strongest pro wrestling match of the night. Up there with Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins and Daniel Bryan and Sami Zayn, this match delivered on all fronts. It was a pro wrestling match, and it had the WrestleMania feel to what a WrestleMania match should be. So my hat's off to both Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley for giving us one hell of an entertaining ride and one hell of an entertaining story leading into WrestleMania and delivering with a fine performance from both of these two females.